I think we need to be cautious here because I don't think he's going to back off this stuff. And I think the impact is going to be negative. How negative?
Well, gentlemen, I find this interesting. We've got a couple of organizations out there, Bank of America and Goldman Sachs, that have actually raised their estimates on financial markets for the end of 2025. It wasn't that long ago. Everybody was saying the world was coming to an end. There was no recovery. And it appears now that the taco trade, Trump always chickens out, is being looked at as more of a negotiating tactic than a long-term effect on the market. So with that said, Joe, you're up. What do you think?
Oh no, let me see if I can focus this thing. I don't have a crystal ball, but this thing helps me sometimes. Well, no, maybe not. Year-end targets for the S&P 500, like anybody has a clue. I've said this many times. I don't know why people keep trying to predict the future when it is inherently unpredictable. But they'll keep doing it because people keep consuming it and people keep thinking it means something. So I guess it gets in some press because we just talked about it. That's all they really care about. I don't know, have any idea what the stock market's going to be 6 months from now, and neither does anybody else. You can take a wild ass guess if you want, and you might be right. And if you are, it doesn't mean a thing about the next time you guess. Uh, Listen, I think this is the big myth about investing that you have to predict the future in order to be a good investor, and it's just not true. What you need to do, investing is about reacting, not acting in advance. You can't act in advance because you don't know what's going to happen. But what you can do is react to what's going on. And that's why we keep saying that it's our job to observe the present and with clear eyes and not try to predict the future because we can't do it. As for Trump always chickens out. Yeah, it does seem to be the consensus these days that none of these tariffs are going to happen, or if they do, they're not going to happen in the way that he's got them outlined here. And I will just say that the tariffs we've seen so far uh, are remarkably similar to the ones that came out on April 2nd. So despite the fact that the calculation they used was wrong, that they used the wrong variable, that they basically pulled these things out of another region, that they are not reciprocal, and all of those things, Donald Trump does not care. He's going to impose these tariffs one way or the other because he thinks it's a good thing. Apparently, we are being harmed by cheap clothes from Bangladesh. And I don't think there's a damn thing anybody can do to convince him otherwise. So we're going to raise the price of cheap clothes for poor people in pursuit of some national goal. I have no idea what it is. Um, I don't actually think he's going to chicken out this time. And I think that what's going on right now is that they're going to impose these tariffs as they talked about on April 2nd, and they're going to let the chips fall where they may. And I know that Secretary Bessent, I mean, the rumor is that he got him to extend the deadline to August 1st to give him time to negotiate more. There's a story out that the Japanese were here ready to negotiate and couldn't get a meeting with Bessent. So I'm not sure how they're supposed to negotiate a deal when you can't meet with the guy you're supposed to be negotiating with. So he did get more time, but I'm telling you, Trump seems determined to do this. He has demonstrated a complete lack of understanding of trade and tariffs and basic economics, as far as I'm concerned. And until somebody is in office around him that's willing to tell him that, we're going to get whatever comes out of his little head. So I would be prepared to say that you should really start to think about what happens if we really get tariffs at these levels. I don't think it's going to be good. The question, as I've said many times, is how bad is it going to be? It's not a matter of are tariffs bad? They're bad. The question is, what's the effect? Who gets hurt the most? It is not going to be all borne by foreigners. It's not the way this works. They may bear some of the cost, but it's going to be borne by U.S. companies that are importing. It's going to be borne by U.S. consumers, period. So we'll see how this comes out, but I don't know. I do not expect him to chicken out this time. I think he's going to really do it. And I tell you, I think with markets at all-time highs, you ought to assume he's going to do it. What's the upside if he doesn't? How much higher can the market go based on the idea that he's going to chicken out again? I don't know. Um, one of the firms that raised their estimate for the S&P 500, I think it was I don't know if it was Morgan Stanley. From what I read this morning, they raised their forward price to earnings ratio. That's how they got a higher target. They raised it from 20 to 24. Why? Because they think interest rates are going to go down. Well, I don't know. A 1920 PE is pretty average. 24 is pretty high. I don't know that there's any reason to think that we should expand multiples here. Why is that? Why is anybody expecting that? I don't know. It makes no sense to me. Look, like I said, I don't have any idea where the market's going, but just to say, I really need to raise my target. So how am I going to do that? The reason they're raising the target is because the market's at 6,200. It's not, if the market was at 5,500, they'd be lowering their target. They're followers. They don't know what they're doing. They don't have any more clue than anybody else where a market's going to be 6 months from now. So ignore them. And like I said, I don't think Trump's going to chicken out. So we'll see what happens.
Steve, do you think that this current attitude up to this point, that the taco trade is going to happen, has been responsible for pushing the markets to new all-time highs?
To a degree, sure. And we had pretty severe reaction when Trump's tariff announcement came out, where he kind of redefined reciprocal from 10 to 15% to 20% and more. And then the market started digesting that there is this bit where Trump will, set out in a pretty extreme position and then back off of it. And the market started calculating, okay, because we saw some evidence that, it's not going to end up as extreme as some of the things he says, and we're, going to go the other way. But honestly, it's kind of nuanced, and the market's reaction is a little nuanced. We just had Trump come out and make recent announcements about pharmaceuticals and copper, and the market digested those two announcements in two different ways. On the pharmaceuticals, there really wasn't much of a reaction. He come out and say, well, I might do it as, really high rates, like 200%. And then there was some qualifications around, well, maybe not that, and I might postpone that. And the market, just didn't take that too seriously. I think it is a little bit more nuanced than just Trump always chickens out. One thing that does concern me, though, in this math is this idea that the market doesn't need to react, because when the market does react, he backs off, so the market's not going to react. There seems to be a little bit of a catch-22 or a problem there. It kind of reminds me of 2008, where risk models show you don't need to worry about, a coordinated collapse of real estate, because it's so diversified that you don't get that. Therefore, you can pile on with risk, and they piled on with risk, and it blew up the models, because the models told you didn't need to worry about something because something never happened. So they did the something that never happens. I do worry a little bit about, we don't need to react, because Trump always reacts to the reaction and backs off. So therefore, don't react. And anyhow, you kind of get my point. There's a lot of moving pieces here, but yeah, I do have the same concern Joe has, that we are going to get blanket tariff rates that are not good for the economy, and that go well beyond just legitimate national security concerns here, which also are not great for the economy. Even if you think that, we've got a problem with a strategic competitor or enemy getting monopolies on goods, that still translates into addressing that into higher prices that aren't good. It's just, I think in that case, you have a much stronger argument for why you need to do it.
Well, Joe, let's slide B of A and Goldman Sachs off the table, and let's talk Alhambra and what we see as reality at the moment. How are we approaching all of this?
We're pretty cautious right now. I do think that the sentiment is too bullish. I think people are overly optimistic about what's going to happen with these tariffs. And so we're a little cautious here. We do think you're going to get some kind of dollar bounce out of this, and that probably has an impact on markets, foreign markets. And so I think we should be cautious, but I don't think there's anything strategic about what Trump's doing. I just think he's doing stuff. Look, if you want to be strategic, don't we need to maybe win the artificial intelligence war? If we want to be the lead in artificial intelligence, why are we raising the cost of building a data center? Because they do take a lot of copper. Um, he can't think past, the immediate impact. There's no second level thinking here. There's no third level thinking here. There's very little thinking going on at all, I think. I woke up in a bad mood this morning about some of this stuff, as you might have guessed by now. Um, I just think it's idiotic. Again, why are we raising the cost we're going to raise the cost of copper, and it's going to raise the cost of building a house. It's going to raise the cost of building the factories that he claims he wants to build here. It's going to raise the cost of building data centers that feed right into artificial intelligence. What the hell? Why are we doing that? That makes no sense. Pharmaceuticals, you know what? The reason we have a high pharmaceutical trade deficit is because of our tax code. Our tax code drove pharmaceutical companies to set up shop in Ireland because it's advantageous for them to do so because our tax code is screwed up. You want to get them to do it here rather than Ireland? Fix the freaking tax code. It's not hard. It's not hard at all. But nobody wants to do the hard work and actually figure out what you need to do to fix this stuff. He's just going to throw tariffs at it. It's like he does everything. So, no, I don't think there's anything strategic about anything he's doing. So, look, I think we need to be cautious here because I don't think he's going to back off this stuff, and I think the impact is going to be negative. How negative? I don't know. Last time we did this with Smoot-Hawley in 1932, it didn't turn out very well. It's not 1932 though, so maybe it'll be different this time. Those are words that we ought not ever say, or at least not say very often or very loud. Look, I think it makes sense to be prudent here, to be cautious and worry about that he actually follows through and does what he says he's going to do. If he does, the impact's negative. It's not good, period. End of story. So I think that, you look at what happened to the copper market yesterday. Over the last 2 days, because of what he said, not because of anything he did, just because of something he said, copper spiked over 10% yesterday in the US and then collapsed on the London Metal Exchange last night. Why? Well, because we're trying to stockpile copper here in the United States because we don't want to pay the tariffs. So the demand for copper in the United States is way above where it should be because he's threatening to put tariffs on it. It just distorts everything. It's idiotic. Like I said, there are lots of problems that we can fix. We can't fix any of them with tariffs, period. None of them. And again, Bangladesh, Kazakhstan, why are we putting tariffs on these countries? What possibly how possibly could we be harmed by buying cheap clothes from Bangladesh? I fail to see it. The countries he's putting 40 and 50% tariffs on have per capita GDPs of $3,000-$4,000 a person. What the hell does he think they're going to buy from us? We can't balance trade with these countries. It's not going to happen. And when it doesn't happen, what is he going to do then? He's going to raise them higher? That doesn't make any sense. Look, I get frustrated when I see stupid things being done. And I think there's a whole bunch of stupid being done right now. So I don't know. To me, it's negative. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all this is going to turn out and we're going to have a boom. I don't see it. But if it happens, we'll follow along. Right now, what I said is you got to be careful here because we don't know what he's going to do. And if he does impose these tariffs, it's going to be negative and it's going to have an impact on growth and it's probably going to have an impact on inflation too. So I just suggest, you decide what you want to do with your own portfolio, I suppose. You want to take that risk? Go ahead. We're not going to take it. We're backing off a little bit. We're not making huge changes. We don't ever make huge changes. We have a strategic allocation and a strategic approach for a reason. We pretty much stick to it. But there are times we need to take a little money off the table. I think now might be a good time to do it.
And just so you know, we're constantly researching. We've got a plan. If you'd like help with your portfolio, let us know.